welcome back. And while politicking and the issues around politicking continue to stay on the front burner, hardly a day can go by without the news of one violent crime or the other happening across the country, and many are concerned how and what should be done or can be done differently so that these matters, especially in certain areas. I mean, look at the Vanguard today. Terrorist flee Zamfara, invade village in Katsina. I mean, the other one, herdsmen, bandits storm Benue communities, kill 3. That's just Vanguard. If you go through the other papers, you'll find other stories of crimes here and there. What should be done differently and what lessons can be drawn from all of this? We have in the studio public affairs and security analyst, Group Captain Sadiq Shehu, retired. Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's kick in here real quick. I mean, it appears like a daily occurrence. I mean, these happenings. Look at this one. Terrorists flee Zamfara, invade communities in Katsina. It's like every day. Is it that as I say, you can't do the same thing and expect a different result? So what should be done differently? If that is the case, that we're doing the same things and expecting a different result?
Oh, well, thank you very much. Unfortunately for us, the issue of security in Nigeria, like I always say, is multifaceted. While we could see visible gains in one area, then you will see relapse and losses in other areas. Now, without mincing words, when you look at, you divide the security situations we have in Nigeria in general, you could break it into 2, 3, or 4. The first one, which we knew, which was the most pressing at a time, was the counterinsurgency operation in the Northeast. At least I think that was the main thing at the transition between the Jonathan administration and the Buhari administration. This is what the Buhari administration inherited. Unfortunately, during their time again from 2016, there was banditry even 2011, but it was at a very low level. It was generally the farmers' herders, because that is the origin of the banditry, farmers' herders clash. But in 2016, that is under the Buhari administration, the banditry was added to the plate of the government as far as security is concerned. Then again, that is when we talk banditry, generally covering the northwest, north central areas. This is where we have the banditry, the kidnapping, mostly. Then again, the secessionist, threats in the southeast. Now, the question to ask: now you have 3 fronts that our security forces are fighting. How did we increase our capacity, to move from facing only Boko Haram to facing banditry to facing secessionists? With due respect, while the Buhari administration, in his last decision, he spoke about increasing the military by about 60,000, an analysis of the size of Nigeria, the number of borders, we have about 23 international borders, and most of our problems emanate, they are linked to our borders. You have a population of 220 million. You have a country of very large size that has both land borders and maritime borders. And you have internal security problems which concern the non-international armed conflict, because that's what the Northeast insurgency is, and then several operations of internal security. The army will always tell you that they are deployed in 33, sometimes they will even say 36 states of the Federation. So that means you have fights in almost all over Nigeria. Now, then something must give. You have to either increase the numbers, increase the equipment, but unfortunately, with due respect, the 60,000 added by the Buhari administration is not adequate. That is where we have it. So the same forces that were using for Boko Haram when you inherited is almost the same number of forces that you are using to also extend to the northwest and the north central and also go and pass. So definitely, the bandits or the other non-state actors, whether the IPOB, ESN, they are not also stupid people. They know the military or the security forces are overstretched. If you ask, if you do a survey among officers and soldiers of the military, you'll find them, the same soldier that served in Maiduguri, he only has a little repose and then he's posted to Zamfara or to Katsina. So it's the same people you are using. So the truth is that, and I'm happy, during the pre-presidential debate, almost all, without exception, all the presidential candidates said they need to increase the security forces. Even though the devil is in the details. I never heard one of them saying, this is what we have, this is what we need. What countries do, looking at this, again, I have talked of national security challenges, but at the same time, we always forget that Nigeria is, whether we like it or not, is a hegemonic country. We're a superpower, either in, in West Africa or in Africa, and we also play overall in the world. So that means apart from your internal security challenges, you also have to have the same enough number of troops and policemen to also do peacekeeping, because that is the only place where you show you're an international player. So you see what all these things. The last time I had the Minister of Defense saying that in total, the Nigerian armed forces are 223,000. That was the figure he gave. Again, what I would like the incoming government to do, because I have spoken about all the presidential ideas were anonymous, we have to add. Now is to work the numbers. What should be the optimal size of Nigerian armed forces? Because now with this experience, we know in shaping your force, it is a possibility that the army would be required, or the armed forces are required to deploy in 36 states. It's a possibility, which is happening now. It is also possible to have counterinsurgency and have so you do a whole of this thing. In the worst case scenario, how many troops do we need? How many policemen do we need?
In all of these things,
yes.
in all of these things, you've painted a picture of what is. 3 areas in the troops or Nigerian security agencies are spread sort of like thin: northeast, northwest, north central, southeast, and to some extent.
We're still doing peacekeeping.
And still doing the international. So internally and externally, when you speak to, I mean, having conversations with some of these operatives, some of them appear to prefer the external postings than the internal postings because of the benefits and welfare packages that appear to go with them. Question then is, in the deployment of all this, of these men and women across the country to handle all of these challenges, what about their morale? Is that also taken into consideration?
Morale is very important, and with due respect, when you say morale even have different aspects. The financial aspect is what comes to mind, but apart from the financial aspect, even rest period is part of morale, because the soldier or the policeman is also a human being. You know, there are general global best practices of how long a soldier should stay or a policeman should stay in a war zone or a conflict area before he goes back, not only to rest and be with family, but also to retrain and come back recharged. So while you said the financial aspect, there are other aspects of the morale. The rest period, time with family, shortening of durations. You can only do that when you have enough soldiers. It is a known problem that soldiers overstay. But since you cannot substitute them with anybody, you cannot withdraw anybody. So you see, it's a catch-22 situation. So the moral factor is also very, very important. But we have to plan for it. And that is what is called in modern force planning. You have to think of distance. In fact, in military planning, it is always said for every soldier that is in the field, there are 5 or 4 other soldiers behind. How are those 4 soldiers? There is one that is supplying him with logistics. There's one soldier that is taking care of his family. There's one soldier that is training. There's one soldier that is resting to come back. So for every soldier you have in the back, you should have like 4 or 5 soldiers out, waiting for this one to come out on the chain. If you don't have those numbers, you are going to have problem. There's a limit to which you can push soldiers to serve. With due respect, I have interviewed, because it is my profession, I have interviewed soldiers who served 4.5 years unbroken in the Northeast. 4.5 years. When I say unbroken, there may not be even leave or pass. Now, there's a limit you can get out of that soldier. The same thing with the policemen. So, what I want, the incoming government, apart from agreeing that we are short of numbers, they have to commission a research. Like I said, all these things are there. Do you want to play international? At a time, we are number 1 peacekeeping country in the world. Now we are number 60. But it is also important, because you have to keep your eyes, you have to keep your face. We don't know when. They may still think that they're going to give Africa a permanent seat on the United States. It is these things that give you voice. So when you put all these things, how many borders, how many people should I have resting, how many should, then you come to the number, what should be decided, which is the debate I have not had. But if you ask me without going into those things, I could say for the armed forces, I'm not going to order security forces, you need numbers of nothing less than 800 to 1 million. How do I arrive at these numbers? Country size, the international we want to play, the size of our population, the number and types of international borders we have. But again, even that numbers, again, you have to be specific. That's what is called force sizing. Whether military or police is what we call a pyramidal structure. You need fewer generals. You need more colonels than generals. You need more majors than generals. You need more, up to you come to the end. The lower the rank, the more you want. Unfortunately, again, I have to say it, we see in our armed forces now a disease that is creeping, where we're becoming top heavy. If you come to the police, it's also the same thing. We may say we want to reach the ratio of 1 police to 450. Right now, we are, I think, by my calculation, we are 1 policeman to 596. We're very close. We're very close. We're not very far off. But what happens again? How do you use the policemen?
It's very interesting.
If you give policemen to people on hire, if you give one man, if you give policemen that are supposed to guard a whole Angua or a whole community to one man to be carrying, if you give policemen to follow Madame to Owambe so that they can hold her back, that number, even if you meet the UN standard, again, so deployment is in terms of the police.
I was just going to accuse you. I think you've just
escaped.
You've just escaped it.
All right.
Accuse you of being biased, you know, with the military, because you've spoken largely when you're talking about security about military size, etc. And that bias is understandable, given that that's your background. But I'm just wondering, when you look at the causes of conflict, we're paying a lot of attention to how to fight this conflict and how to stem it, because that's already occurred. And yes, we need to do these things because that's what will make our citizens feel safe. But we don't know where the next one will rear its head from.
Exactly.
And there are questions about how, you know, we've even dealt with the root causes of what is underneath this particular crisis. For instance, banditry. What has caused this? This farmer herders, so-called farmer herders clashes. What has caused it as well? So are we doing enough to understand the sources of our conflict and see how it is that we can address them?
Thank you very much. Yes. When I talk about the kinetic operations of the military, now you are talking because the conflict is already upon us. So we have to. But we have to look at preventive measures. And looking at preventive measures is looking at the root causes, like you pointed out. What are the root causes of this conflict? Without going any deep, is unemployment, large-scale poverty, a large youth bulge without work to do. This is where the problem is. So what have we been doing? Then we now have to revise. Like the current government now, we have the social investment program. We have the N-Power, N-Skills, and all those this thing where some people are giving. Maybe we have to look at the way to rebase this, because there is no doubt that government cannot absorb the number of graduates we are producing. That is one. But not even the graduates. It's not everybody who is a graduate. Even the people who didn't go to school, they owe something to the government to find something to do for them.
But if you look at where the conflict is occurring, when we are saying this conflict, it's not where we have, without trying to disparage any section of our country, the southwest, southeast, south, they have their own issues, their own peculiar issues. The issues that have worried many people have been issues of insurgency, as you rightly pointed out, and now banditry, which is also, resulted in many other things like kidnapping, etc. So I'm wondering, when you look at that, people have pointed to mineral resources. The fact that people want to be able to mine Nigeria's numerous mineral resources, not pay any tax. The fact that there is weak law enforcement in many places, and the fact that there's no government presence in some areas, as well. So for you, how do we begin to address this? We have new governors coming in, perhaps some of them appreciating the problem for the very first time, some of them appreciating it from a distance. How do you think that we can begin? For instance, when you look at Zamfara, where we have gold that is just being taken away. I know that the state government has tried to, have a handle on it, but it looks like it's something that is beyond it. Do you think that it's something that government, a state government, for instance, can handle if it really puts its mind to it?
State governments can do. And with due respect, I am from the Northwest myself. I'm from Sokoto. Just recently, I read about the Southwest governors coming to start, is it an enterprise, a joint enterprise? This is what the governors in the Northwest need to do. Land, arable land, family land is not a problem there. Raising, animal husbandry is not a problem there. But there's no concerted effort to do it on a large scale that will provide employment for these young men and women. Most of them didn't go to school. But if you could engage into agriculture, successfully and profitably, they will leave. Unfortunately, again, we are coming with a generation, almost all these young men, there is no work. He wants to hold the latest handset. Get the point? So why is he going to get the money? This is why the banditry. So there's a lot the governors can do in tackling the root causes. Yes, they will always complain we are not in control of police, we are not in control of, but you are in control of your budget. You could do large-scale farming depending on the area, and that will employ and absorb people there. And then it's like I said, it's unemployment, poverty, and again the largest, and again rebase local government, local governance. Because the absence of local government is part of it. There are a lot of areas where these bandits will set up and operate. I just listened to BBC. This is where a man from Katsina in Kankara area where they call Daji Rugu, that area. He said the bandit will knock at your door and say he wants food. He will tell your wife to jump up and go and cook food for him. He will sit down. He will finish the food. He will eat it and go. That is even the best. If not, he might even ask for other services from your wife. So you see, all this need to be done. I agree these governors are not, but they are not powerless. They are not powerless. The money some of them are spending on hiring private jets and junketing, they could start. There is no state that does not have an economic activity that when enough money, it will generate income. It will generate millionaires, even billionaires. As long as this thing will trickle down, you will have less distance. So we should not forget, while I'm a military man, we should not forget the root causes.
If you can hear me, Group Captain, perhaps that's really where the question I was going to pose to you, the root causes. It would seem like we are pandering away from those root causes and just treating the surface. There is a quote we played earlier for people to see, attributed to Kabir Adamu, who is a security expert. He said, "We saw from the state governors during the Naira redesign policy the kinds of political energy and response it triggered. We saw state governors going to courts challenging the FG, but we have not seen that type of response from them when it comes to issues that have to do with insecurity." Given this statement, Group Captain Sahid Shehu retired, what should we be looking at? What does this mean? Does it mean that the government officials are not really interested in these issues of insecurity, or they have more urgent interests than the security of their people?
Thank you very much. Like I said earlier, they are more interested in saying, I am not in control of police, I'm not in control of military, so even though they call me, but again, that is ignoring the root causes. Nothing stops for a governor, if I'm governor of my state in the Northwest, nothing stops me from introducing large-scale agricultural, mechanized agriculture. There are a lot of cheap mechanized farming tools now, that are available from China and other lower, lower technology, lower cost countries that you can bring. So one of the issues is that, again, we have to, the type of Nigerians now where the youth, they are not like their fathers, they're not like their forefathers. If you want a youth now who has come to Lagos or Abuja and seen the high life to go back and be doing farming with hoe and bending down, you are not likely to succeed. Even the Fulani people, the problem is having the way their fathers followed cows, living on probably just 5 naira a day until the man becomes a very rich man. The children of now are not ready to do that. So we have to move with the times. You have to modernize these things that will attract the young people so that, poverty will be reduced. As long as you don't reduce this poverty.
Who takes the lead of that kind of conversation that you're leading, that you're talking about now? Because everybody wants to live a better life, and they will do whatever they can at any given point in time. We've been talking about diversifying the Nigerian economy from, one or two products that we export to this agriculture that you're talking about now. And it would seem like we're just pandering, around these issues. In terms of setting an agenda for the government, be it federal or states, who takes the lead? What exactly is to be done? So we're not just talking about these issues, we're actually lining up opportunities that they know is there, as well as things to do, and by whom.
Okay, in that aspect, both the federal government and the state government have a role to play. There are areas where it is the federal government that would intervene, and there are areas that state government should take the lead. And again, when I talk state governments, again, I bring the example of just what I read about the Southwest governors coming together to set up enterprises or business that will generate employment and prosperity for their children. I mean, for their citizens. In almost all the parts, the Northeast have their governors block. The northern governors have their blocks. So what I'm saying, apart from individual state efforts, also these northern governors, where these states have this abject poverty and this, they can come together. If you remember, in the 1960s or 1970s, we have things like this cotton board, we have groundnut board, we have people doing hide and skin, that our people are rich enough to even, you know, interact with foreign to sell their products. These things are still there. But there is no government support to make sure that, you know, the modern practices and modern implements that will make the work of somebody bending down on farming is reduced. This is where the state governments will come in, either as individual state governors or as group, whether they call them Northern Governors Forum or Northwest Governors Forum or whatever. They can do that. And like I said, the areas mostly, you know, by this banditry, they are not areas that can talk of lack of land. I don't think we're using even 10% of the land that God gave us. So these are the issues. Both federal government and federal government can relook at all the, you know, the poverty alleviation programs to see, because having experience of working in some of these programs, again, we should look at sustainability. We should look at, you know, if we give somebody a small amount over a period of year, will that be able to, to make him to stand on his legs? We should look at the record. If that is not obtainable, then we should look at what programs that are communal in character, so that people will move out of poverty. These are the issues that will help to alleviate this insecurity, because at the bottom, like we said, unemployment, large number of youths without work, which government cannot absorb. These are part of the problem. And of course, the taste of modern life.
Well, I only really just shudder when I think of the fact that unemployment is expected to even rise. The projections, I think, over 40%. So we're still at 33%, and we have this sort of insecurity in our hands. So what happens when we're at over 40% of unemployment? By the way, some would also disagree and say, well, that is not enough reason for people to go into criminality up until the point of even killing others. I know it's an ongoing debate around unemployment and insecurity, but the fact is that we have these challenges. Whether or not they're related is another thing. We need to solve insecurity, we need to solve unemployment. But, you know, the question mark I talked about, well, maybe it was an accusation which she dropped. I would like to bring it back. I'd like to resurrect that question in quote, and it's the mentality of the military, their orientation in dealing with this sort of insecurity which we're seeing, particularly banditry, terrorism. Some of these things are ideological. So I wonder if the military is actually equipped to deal with ideological threats, issues that stem from ideology, because what a lot of people see as a training of the military is to just be clinical, neutralize and move on, not, go deep into the causes. So is the military really equipped for that? Because we've seen the military play a huge role in combating insecurity.
Well, I always go back to the classic definition of counterinsurgency. What counterinsurgency said is all military, diplomatic, legal, economic, and other efforts that will tackle the kind of crime that are looking at. What does it say? It's only a part that the military. You cannot bomb poverty out of Nigeria. You cannot bomb unemployment out of Nigeria. So while the military has its role to play, other sectors of the government have to kick in, including private sector. So the federal government is the one to design for the military what role are you going to play, what others are going to play. Again, I am emphasizing this because, again, with due respect, I tend to see a tendency to allow the military to operate on its own, which is antithetical to even the democratic norms. Whoever is the president, whoever are in the National Assembly, the Constitution gave them the right to supervise the military. The military has a role to play. The military operation is linked to prosperity and development, but up to a limit. it is not the military that will set its own agenda. If it is allowed to set its agenda, it means somebody is failing in his responsibility, either in the executive branch or in the this. So all other sectors of government have a role to play. There is a role now. There's tendency to overemphasize the military or the security because we have allowed the problem, like I said, is already upon us. So to go back now to tabula rasa, to where we don't have this, and then you have to use the military or the security, this thing. But at the same time, pari passu, while you're using the military, we should also be thinking of how do you bring development? How do you reduce poverty? How do you reduce unemployment?
Yeah. Captain Shehu, as we wind down, there's been that conversation in some quarters about decentralizing security, allow the states to get more involved. Some have even suggested state policing, local government police, and different institutions. We clearly demarcated duties and response and deliverables. Do you think that will make any difference? I mean, with the new administration kicking in, do you think that's something they should consider?
Well, I must say, I was not an advocate of the state police for the simple reason. When you want to bring anything new, you look at how it worked in other countries or didn't work. There are good examples of state police. But then, with due respect to our political leaders, when you see some irresponsible act from some people over small matters, that is where you have this reticence about whether you should allow governors to have police. But having said that, the devil is in the details. If you can work out a structure as to what state A has a police, what those police can do, what they cannot do, and put mechanisms, I think it is high time we look at that. Because it is becoming clearer, but it has been clear for such a long time. But that fear of misuse of that, instrument of violence, what is holding people. But it's becoming clearer that the aspect of security is above what the federal government with its own capacity can only handle. So we have to look at that. Not only that, we also have to look even at the private sector coming in. Now, give an example. If you want to, police want to go, because let's face it, police are making a lot of money by hiring policemen out. Why not allow private security companies to maybe those ones that are licensed to carry arms? So that if I'm a big man and I want to go and do OMB in my village, I want people to carry me with court, I can go and hire them. Then they will follow me. Instead of carrying police that are supposed to cover a whole, a district, and then one man is carrying them or his wife is carrying them. So this is the areas that we have to look at.
Thank you very much. Group Captain Sadiq Shehu, retired public affairs and security analyst. Thank you for coming on the show this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.